Folks, Canadian Prepper here. My friends, we are absolutely and unequivocally at war right now. Let me explain. One of the hardest things about being a prepper nowadays is not the accumulation of gear, skills, community, taking care of your health, self-discipline, none of those things. The hardest thing about being a prepper in the modern age is sifting through the BS, deciphering the semantic obfuscations of mainstream media in order to get an accurate read on what is currently going on in the world so that we can make valid inferences about the future and act today accordingly. That's one of the cornerstones of preparedness is intelligence. If you don't have good intelligence, then you're at a loss. Now, yesterday I made a video entitled Europe has declared war on Russia. And for all intents and purposes, Europe is ostensibly at war with the Russians, just not, it hasn't been made official yet. If you're waiting for something to be made official in this modern, postmodern age, you are waiting essentially to be lied to, because by the time something is made official or deemed what it is, deemed what we know it is, what we can see with our own eyes, it is likely going to be far too late, or there's going to be other elements at play. So, yes, for all intents and purposes, we are ostensibly at war with the Russians, and war will never be declared again officially. Yesterday, I was making reference to the fact that there was a resolution proposed by the European Parliament, which is unanimously agreed upon, which basically was to deem Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. Now, any country who has had this designation in the past has either went to war or is currently in a perpetual state of war or is currently isolated from the rest of the world, like North Korea. To name a few, we have Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Sudan, Syria, all countries who have been designated as state sponsors of terrorism. And look what the outcome has been. Now, there's a reason why the United States has been reluctant to place this label on the Russians, because they know what it means. It means the cessation of communication on the back channels, and this is not a good thing to label another superpower as a state sponsor of terrorism. It has drastic repercussions. It's not something that is going to happen before peace is negotiated, okay? And it's not something that you can walk back. When you say that a country is committing international war crimes, when you say that a country's military is being used to target non-combatants, that you want reparations and that you want tribunals, and that your main stated mission is to effectively force regime change within Russia, that's called war. Okay, just because we don't officially give it that name doesn't mean it's not happening. Now, I know a lot of people are waiting for Washington to send them out an emergency text message saying, sorry guys, hey, actually we're at war, so you better get ready. Here on this channel as preppers, we like to use our common sense, and maybe that's not the best way of framing it, but we try to not delude ourselves with respect to the semantics. We are arming, we are supplying manpower through mercenaries, we are supplying intelligence and resources for the population of Ukraine, who is the spearhead driving into the side of the Russian Empire. Yes, the Russians have invaded Ukraine. Regardless, we are the ones who are now completely responsible and culpable in this conflict. And the thing is that even Russia hasn't called what they're doing a war. No country will ever call it a war in the future. It's always going to be a defensive maneuver, a special military operation, anti-terrorist operation, operation such and such freedom, whatever you want to call it. It's never going to be called a war again. Only in hindsight do we talk about the Afghanistan war or the Iraq war. We never formally declare war anymore. All that's going to happen is that Article 5 will be invoked. There'll be no formal declaration of war, because I assure you, if there was a formal declaration of war on the Russians by any country, you wouldn't hear about it, because within 10 minutes it would be lights out. because we would be in the post-nuclear world. Okay, so yes, we are at war. I don't walk that back. I mean, part of the problem is that in seeing the world as I do, sometimes I forget that not a lot of people are on the exact same wavelength. So what we talk about today is going to be made official 3 months from now. This is why, if you look at our track record for our predictions on this channel, whether it was talking about the pandemic in years, in the run-up to this thing, I remember a conversation me and Survival Lily had that's on YouTube here. We're sitting around a fire and we're talking, it's 2019, summer of 2019, and we're talking about how the next crisis is going to be a major pandemic. We talked about the war and the run-up to the war. We talked about mobilization when everybody said that that likely wasn't a possibility. The pro-Russian side said that the Russians had no need to do it, and the anti-Russian side said that they don't have the capability to do it. So we're just a few months ahead. So I apologize if people are getting lost in the semantics, but it is what it is. We are, for all intents and purposes, at war with the Russians. Now, however, the mission of this channel is to get as many people prepared as possible. Even if I don't agree or particularly like some people, and the amount of people I don't like are very, very few. I might not like people's attitudes, but that doesn't mean I don't like them as a person, okay? But the reason why I want to help people get prepared, even though I might not necessarily agree with them, is that just one less liability I have to deal with. That's one less zombie coming through the door. So if the way I'm presenting this information is not conducive to maximizing the amount of people that the message is going to be exposed to, then I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing a disservice to people, because the ultimate goal is to minimize the amount of suffering in the world, to maximize the amount of happiness and preparation, and thus happiness in the world, and encourage people to self-improve, because the whole point of preparedness and survival is self-improvement. It's not just about preparing for doomsday. It's all about changing people's lives for the better, because the fact of the matter is that you can't be prepared for what we talk about on this channel if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not an upstanding member of your community, if you're not a helpful member of your community, if you're not taking care of your health and your mental health, and you're not spiritually intact, you can't be prepared. So preparedness forces self-improvement amongst people. And if the way that I'm conveying this information is not working, then I need to adapt and I need to change. And I take full responsibility for how the information gets received. So yes, in the future, we do have this plan to do the Prepper News, which is going to be, we're building a studio and all the rest. And I know a lot of people like the car because it's like singing in the shower, it's more authentic. And maybe we'll do something like that. Maybe we'll bring a car into the studio and I'll do a set. I'll have a TV set or a news set with a car, and I'll just do the news from the car or something like that. But we do have a plan. But, of course, if the way that we're communicating this information isn't working, or if it's having negative effects, if the sensationalism and the alarmism that we perceive, because of course we're seeing things as they are, at least in my opinion, we're seeing things as they're going to be a few months down the road. If that's, pushing people away, then that's not what we want to do. So we need to obviously adapt and try to do things in a way that is going to be more well received by more people. Now, it's very difficult on this platform to do what we are doing, especially when we're not coming at it from a politically charged angle, from a religiously charged or an ideologically charged angle. It would be very easy. I would have 5 million subscribers if I wore a Make America Great Again hat. And I have nothing against people who have various political views or various religious views. It's just that I personally know that in order to get an accurate read on the present, you have to minimize the amount of bias. You see, this is why it doesn't matter what side you're on. if you are hardline any side, you are not going to be able to get an accurate read on what is currently going on, and you're not going to get an accurate read on the future. So I, being in the field of intelligence gathering, if you will, and doing this sort of analysis, I have to be in a position where I'm not letting my own biases skew my perception of what is going on. So that's why I take flack from the Russia bros. I take flack from the Ukraine bros. I take flack from the right and the left. And I'm not saying woe is me at all. That's par for the course. But I'm just stating that because it's difficult, especially nowadays on YouTube, when it's like swimming upstream against a waterfall, because this type of long-form content is going the way of the dinosaur. Right now, Shorts, Instagram, in terms of watch time, are taking over. Instagram Stories, TikTok. These types of short, bite-sized content that doesn't really involve any depth or follow-through with people is taking over. And so it's very difficult in order to get people the information, because it's a competition for... like I believe that the quality of the analysis that we do might not always be reflected in some of the video titles and thumbnails. And there's a trade-off there, right? You have to try to capture people's attention, but you also don't want to desensitize people to things. And you also don't want to piss people off, right? Because you don't want to have incongruence with respect to what you're proposing in the title and the thumbnail and what you're saying in the video. I would like to think that what I'm saying in the videos is doing more to alleviate tension than it is to, drum up unrest and drum up anxiety within people. But I guess if some people are interpreting it that way, then that's not good either. So, we walk a fine line between being alarmist and not being alarmist enough in terms of presenting this information, and unfortunately Shorts content is taking over. And like I said, there's no follow-through with that content. There's no, you'll watch a short video, even if it's a condensed bite-sized piece of information that is ado with current events, even if it's news, even if it's educational. There's never any follow-up, because you just simply flip to the next video. It's like a slot machine. It's constant. You just keep pulling that lever, right? Oh, this is a great idea, and next. And then before you know it, you're 50 videos into this thing, and you haven't really had time to ingest and mull over and think about the information that you've processed, much less apply it. And so that's where like I say, we're swimming uphill against a raging water, and it's only getting worse. So we're going to have to find ways to adapt. However, we're going to have to start employing more Shorts content into the channel in order to reach a broader audience, because again, the mission is to get as many people prepared as possible, so that when the shizzy does hit the fizzy, there are less zombies banging on my door. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And of course, a added positive side effect of that is that people are taking care of themselves. Prepping is like a martial art. You can have a third Dan karate black belt who's never been in a real fight in his life. Maybe he's fought in some tournaments, but maybe he never got in a real street fight where he had to defend himself in his entire life. But he dedicated hours and hours a week to that discipline. For what? People might say, for what? Well, it brought him a lot of other positive things. He took care of his health. Okay, it taught him self-discipline, made him a harder worker. It taught him about different things in life and relationships and things of that nature. So it's never in vain. Preparedness is never in vain, because the fact that you are prepared necessarily entails that you are taking care of yourself, that you are healthier than you otherwise would be, because you can't have an addiction and be prepared. If you have an addiction, then you're not prepared, or at least you're not nearly as prepared as you could be. You might have the gear, but you're not emotionally ready. You are not psychologically ready, and you're probably not physically ready as well. So we have, in the past, to the best of my knowledge, made many valid predictions on this channel. Unfortunately, Murphy's Law has been in full effect for the last 3 years. And it takes some mental gymnastics for me to try to predict a future 3 months from now where the world is doing better than it is today, and it's not more austere. So that's what I think. I think that things are going to get worse before they get better, and I think the short and long-term projections are very bad for the world. Maybe in the midterm there might be a little bit of reprieve if the powers that be can find a way to capitalize on peace more than they can war, and people in positions of influence and power come together and they can, realize that you can have a mutually beneficial relationship with the Russians and the Chinese in a way that is peaceful, and that everybody's not on edge, worried about being conquered, invaded, and this competitive global market that we're in can allay just for a few minutes so we can all possibly propose some solutions. Then maybe, there's a way out of this. Maybe there's a bull market in 2023 if the Russians and the Ukrainians come to the negotiating table. But at least right now, the way things are going, that's an impossibility, because designating a country as a state sponsor of terrorism, even if it is not a binding resolution, in that countries are not obligated to necessarily act and sanction and embargo and do everything that you would do deeming a country a state sponsor of terrorism, it's still a symbolic step in the wrong direction. And this is not something that happens before peace is negotiated. The Russians are preparing a major winter offensive. General Winter is always on the side of the Russians, historically. And the West knows it. You have Poland putting German missiles on the border with Ukraine, getting ready to intercept missiles coming into what I presume is going to be Lviv. Because, and this is how, the war is going to spread, is that eventually these Patriot missiles are going to be used to shoot down either a missile that is interpreted as coming into Poland, but maybe it wasn't, or heaven forbid it hits a Russian fighter jet. Then that is an all-out declaration of war. So you have Ukraine hosting German weapons, Poland hosting German weapons, Poland hosting American-made German weapons to protect the Ukrainian airspace, and people think that we're not at war. Don't wait for it to be made official by the so-called powers that be, because by the time it actually is, it's going to be far too late to prepare. That's the whole point. And if you don't encourage people to take this matter seriously, if you don't communicate the urgency of it, people simply will not do anything. Okay, there has to be a certain element of this is right around the corner for anybody to give it the time of day that they're going to prepare for it. I mean, look at people in their own lives, the gluttony of some people. You can tell a person who's 500 pounds overweight that you're going to die soon, if you keep doing this, and they'll keep doing it. It's not until they have a heart attack that maybe they're going to consider something. And even after that, a few days after having the heart attack, they'll be right back to their same old habits. So this is why we have to be hard-hitting at this point in time with respect to how we're packaging the information that we're trying to provide people, because it is about saving lives, not only by helping people navigate an apocalyptic wasteland, but also by improving themselves so that they can just be stronger if it is a slow grind collapse to the finish, a slow decay, a subtle degradation of the standard of living that is going to happen over the next few years as a result of competition for energy, the decoupling, the war for resources and influence. And so I just wanted to do a follow-up, because I think some people perhaps don't view it as I see it, and I totally understand that. I have a lot of new subscribers who don't understand the backstory to this channel. You know, part of the reason why I show you guys the gear in the videos is to provide added value to those videos. You know, we don't show like rebranded crap off AliExpress. We show you guys top-notch, cutting-edge, innovative gear, the best stuff that's out there, so that if you so decide to make a purchase for one of those products, you're making an informed purchase. So that's the reason why we show that stuff. You know, this never started as a business, and my dream has always been to have a preparedness store where I bring together some of the best manufacturers that the world has to offer, and people who genuinely believe in their industry or have lived experiences that have compelled them to create a business. You know, we just started working with Sea to Summit, and not many people understand the story behind Sea to Summit. It's a very exclusive brand. It's kind of up there with like Arc'teryx in terms of the exclusivity with respect to who can sell their stuff. And the whole story of Sea to Summit was a guy who was climbing Mount Everest, and he couldn't get the gear that he needed, so he decided to innovate it himself. So those are the types of people and companies that we work with. Japanese saw manufacturers who have been in the industry for hundreds of years and are in love with their craft. Those are the people that we want to work with, and those are what we wanted to get you connected with, because I understand the difference between being out there in the field with really crappy gear and really good gear. A lot of the gear that is included in these prefab bug out bags is not going to last a few days. I mean, those are disposable backpacks. They may just get you by. And honestly, in a short-term emergency, absolutely, they're worth having. But having good gear and having, a satisfactory gear, the difference is quite profound when you start beating it up in the backcountry. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the current state of affairs. And I probably won't be doing a daily update video today, but I will comment on one more thing. And right now, the Ukrainians government is telling the Ukrainians, don't panic. Winter is going to be fine. Please don't leave. Well, so many people have already forgotten what happened 1 week prior to this invasion. And we made that prediction, just another prediction that we made, that the normalcy bias is in full effect. The war is coming. Nobody is evacuating because the government is saying everything's going to be fine. Well, they're saying the exact same thing today, only they are now at least starting to evacuate some of the cities. But they're still minimizing the threat because they don't want to start a panic, and that's what it's all about. When you say the word war, you create a panic. So wars will never be declared anymore. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.